Righty-ho, here we go, around the corner. I'm in probably fourth gear, I should think. Right, put my foot down. Yeah, we got no change of gear at all as we go around the corner. Try it again. Put my foot down quite a long way. And same here. It's not until the car straightens out that it actually changes gear. So it will wait all that time round the corner in the gear that we went into it in. Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW repairs and information. Well, last video episode we talked about trans failsafe prog and all the stuff you can do to stop that happening, and we went through 5 different scenarios. Today is different. Gearbox problems which don't cause trans failsafe, and quite often these aren't actual problems with the gearbox, but it's normal behaviour. Now, if the EGS tells the gearbox to change a gear and it doesn't, you'll get trans failsafe prog. So where have you got a situation where it doesn't change gear when you want it to, that's normal behaviour. And there's a few problems around the cars that can cause strange behaviour where you don't change gear. Now, the first one which catches people out is just the normal warm-up routine. Now, I don't use the gearbox warm-up routine. I get past it straight away, but I'll show you what I mean. Right, well, when the car is, and the gearbox, the engine and gearbox is cold, it will hold gears, and I'll show you what I mean. So off we go. So once we start moving, I'd like to be in second gear by now, to be honest, because I'm moving. But no, the gearbox is going to hold the gears right up to almost 2000 RPM. There we go, up to almost 2000 RPM before we change gear. Now that's a bit of a nuisance, and especially when it's freezing cold, the old viscous coupled fan starts to howl and all the rest of it. I don't like that. I don't like the way gearbox behaves in that situation. So whenever I start up the car, I put it into sports mode and put it straight into second. Then I can pull away quite happily in second gear rather than blasting down the road at 2000 RPM with the viscous coupled fan howling away. Okay, problem number 2. No 4th or 5th gears. Going down the motorway, we're up at almost 80 miles an hour and you're still in 3rd gear. What's going on? Well, there's 2 causes for that. The second one, which we'll discuss in a minute, is gearbox oil temperature, whether perceived or real. Now, if the gearbox temperature goes too high, it won't use 4th and 5th gear to reduce the amount of torque through the gearbox. But the first one we're going to talk about is ASC plus T or DSC problems to stop it changing a gear. Now, normal behaviour is such that if we go round a sharp corner and give the throttle a bit of a poke, it won't change gear. And there's a good reason for that, and that's it. Especially if you're at the limits of adhesion, you know, really pushing the car hard, then a change of gear may cause loss of stability. And the reason for that is that when it changes gear, it has to do a sequence of events. The first one is reduce power from the engine. So the EGS says reduce power, which happens. A brake band is put on inside the gearbox. The gear is changed, brake band release, engine commanded to give its power again. Now that drop in power as it changes gear may be enough to destabilise the car, and you might lose it on the corner. Whereas if you stay in the same gear, you're right at the limits of adhesion, but you get round the corner safely. Okay, so that's normal behaviour. So we're coming up to a corner here. Let's see what happens, as long as there's no traffic in the way. I'll keep the car in drive rather than using gears manually like I usually do. Righty-ho, here we go, around the corner. I'm in probably 4th gear, I should think. Right, put my foot down. Yeah, we got no change of gear at all as we go around the corner. Try it again. Put my foot down quite a long way And same here. It's not until the car straightens out that it actually changes gear. So it'll wait all that time round the corner in the gear that we went into it in, and it'll refuse to change gear until we're out of it. That's normal behaviour, and it saves you coming a cropper. Okay, Tim, what's that got anything to do with not having fourth and fifth gear when you're on a straight line? Well, the reason is that the way that the system knows you're going around the corner is via the ASC plus T system, the ABS system. One set of wheels goes round faster than the other. So if we're going round a right-hand corner, the wheels on the inside actually rotate slower than the ones on the outside. And the ASC plus T system, or the ABS system, or the DSC system, depending on what you've got on your car, determines that we're going round a corner. And so it'll signal to the gearbox, don't change gear, mate. I could come a cropper if you change gear. I'm right on the limits of adhesion. Goodness sake, don't change gear. Okay, so that's behaviour on the corner, but what happens? What if you're in a straight line and it won't change up in the fourth and fifth? Well, the answer is obvious if you think about it. It's wheel diameter. Now, if you've got a wheel whose diameter is much less than the others, the ASC plus T is going to think you're going around the corner. Reason for that is smaller diameter wheels go round faster than larger ones. It's pretty obvious when you think about it. Yeah, Tim, I haven't got different diameter wheels on the car, for goodness sake. Have you checked your tyre pressure recently, sir? Yeah, if you've got about 10-15 psi difference in tyre pressure, that wheel is going to go round faster than the fully inflated ones, because its rolling diameter changes, it reduces, and so it speeds up. So there you go. Something as simple as a tyre that's not properly inflated can cause a lack of fourth and fifth gears. So it's always the place you check first if you've got this problem without fourth and fifth gears. Rolling diameter of all your wheels. And the problem can be front axle to back axle, right side to left side. Now, this problem quite often happens when new tyres are fitted, especially where tyres are fitted that are not the correct diameter. Now, on MeekNet I've got a list of equivalent tyre diameters. So for 15, 16, 17 inch wheels, you can choose the right tyre to keep the right rolling diameter of the wheel. Now, if you choose a tyre which has got the wrong diameter, usually it happens front to rear axle, sometimes it happens that just one tyre is replaced, then that tyre may well have a different rolling diameter to the rest of them, in which case the ASC plus T thinks you're going around the corner and it'll lock out fourth and fifth gears. Start there. Right, so that's ASC plus T system problems. Wheel rolling diameter. Okay, gearbox ATF temperature. This causes exactly the same symptoms. No fourth and fifth gears, no matter how fast you go. Well, I think it'll change up to fourth at about 85 miles an hour. Or change gear when the revs reach 5,500 to be more accurate. So what's going on? Well, the gearbox software is designed so that if the gearbox temperature starts increasing significantly, it will lock out fourth and fifth gears. And it does that because the fourth and fifth gears, when you're pushing the car, is taking a lot of torque, and the usual generator of heat is clutch packs. So if you're giving it a lot of welly in fourth and fifth gear, then a lot of heat is created by the clutch packs. That heats up the ATF to a point where it will lock out fourth and fifth gears. Okay, so that's the reason why you don't get fourth and fifth gears. It's to reduce gearbox torque and reduce clutch slippage, which causes the temperature. Okay, so there's two problems associated with this. One of them is just a failure to read the gearbox temperature correctly. and this is measured by a tiny little temperature sensor within the gearbox, and then the signal from that goes up to the EGS, and if it thinks the temperature is too high, then it locks out fourth and fifth gears. Now the temperature may well be too high, and we'll come on to that in a minute, but quite often it isn't, and it just measures incorrectly. And the best way to check that is on a cold morning, connect IMPA to the car, and IMPA can read the temperature of the gearbox. Now if it's up at 80 or 90 degrees C, then you think, it's not that, it should be around about 20 C at the very most, and then you know straight away it's the temperature sensor in the gearbox. And repair of that, unfortunately, is a bit fiddly, and it's to replace the harness within the gearbox. So usually do it when you're coming up to a oil and filter change. Drop the pan, drop the filter, and then you've got access to the harness. You can't change the harness without losing all the ATF, I'm afraid. Change the harness with one that came from a scrapper, they're usually okay. New one's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Whip it in, and off you go again. All of a sudden you've got fourth and fifth gears again. Other half to this problem is real temperature problems in a gearbox. Now, unless things are going horribly wrong with a gearbox, it will not generate excessive temperatures. The temperature comes, as I say, from the clutch packs. Where they start to slip, that slip causes heat, and that heat gets into the ATF. The whole gearbox heats up, and then it locks out fourth and fifth gears. That's very unusual. It is extremely unusual for that to happen. More often, it's the cooling of the ATF that is the root cause of all of this. Now, in the E31 and other models, which I can't think of at the moment, there's a separate ATF cooler. So I've got a little radiator at the front that cools down the ATF. There's 4 radiators in this car, and one of them being the ATF cooler. That's fine, generally not a problem at all. Unfortunately, when you get up to the E38 and E39 and probably other models, instead of having a separate radiator, thought, well, this waste of space having another radiator. We just use the main cooling radiator, and what we do is we use a heat exchanger. You can just imagine them at BMW thinking up these ridiculous ideas. Yeah, a heat exchanger, so it exchanges the ATF temperature with the coolant temperature, so it gets the ATF up to temperature quite quickly, which is good. But then when the ATF temperature rises, heat can be dissipated by the coolant. Well, that's all well and good. And there's something else associated with that, and that's something called a voltage regulator, which isn't a voltage regulator. It's actually a thermostat, and that controls the flow of coolant through the heat exchanger. Or is it the flow of it? No, it is the flow of coolant through the heat exchanger. Now, what obviously can go wrong is the thermostat can fail, and then it just doesn't cool down the ATF at all, and it just gets hotter and hotter. Or, and this more commonly happens, the heat exchanger, which has got a lot of fins and a lot of tiny passageways in it, blocks up, and it's the lowest point in the cooling system as well. It's right down on the left-hand side, right at the bottom of the radiator. So yeah, it just builds up all sorts of stuff. So if you're not using BMW coolant, or if you like using tap water and you want to kill your car, that's what dies first, is the heat exchanger. No, keep to BMW coolant in a 50-50 mix and you last forever. So yeah, the heat exchanger gets blocked up, and so we don't get any exchange of heat, and the gearbox temperature just rises and rises, and at some point it'll say fourth and fifth gear, you can't have them. And it just, the EGS says no, locks you. Third gear is the highest gear you're going to get. Both of those can be measured with IMPA. You can actually measure real gearbox temperature and the false gearbox temperature on a cold day. So there you go. That was, I think, number 3 problem for gearbox not changing gear. Right, well, I've got a bonus one coming up in a minute. But first of all, we'll quickly go through the normal behaviour of the gearbox as we've discussed already. When the engine and gearbox is cold, it will hold the gears. It's even in the owner's manual. It says it's there to heat up the engine. I absolutely hate that, because you end up going down here in first gear with the viscous couple fan howling away. It's not a good look. So I always go drive, Steptronic, second gear before I pull away. In fact, I don't get above 1000 RPM for about a mile when I leave work and from here, by just selecting the gears manually. It's much kinder to an old engine, especially one with 173,000 miles on it. Much better to use low power, low engine speed, no messing about. And then the problem with no fourth and fifth gears, one of two things: perceived or real gearbox temperature problems, or wheel diameter problems. Get your tyre pressure gauge, go and measure the pressures of all 4 tyres, and if these problems happen just as you've got new tyres from a tyre shop, tell them they fitted the wrong size tyres. As I said, there's a chart on MeekNet which gives you a list of tyre sizes which you should be using for the E38 and the E31. If the rolling diameter's wrong, you're going to get problems. And then, of course, perceived and real gearbox temperature problems. Use BMW coolant, for goodness sake. 50-50 mix with distilled water, and you won't get heat exchanger problems. Oh, I've seen such a mess recently on the forums where someone must have used tap water. There's just so much corrosion in there. And the corrosion always goes straight to the heat exchanger because it's the lowest point, and it's full of very small coolant passageways as well. So yeah, BMW coolant, 50-50 mix. And unfortunately, if it's blocked up, it's blocked up. You're going to have to change the voltage regulator and the heat exchanger with a second-hand one or a new one. Change all your coolant, put the right stuff back in it. You've been warned so many times now. Normal behaviour for the Steptronic is that when you're at a standstill, you get first, second and third gears. If you try and put it in fourth gear, it just pops back into third gear. Into sport, stick forward, second gear, and you can feel it select second gear. Third gear, and you can feel it select third gear. Fourth gear, nah. Third gear only, mate. That's all you're going to get. That's to reduce the torque through the gearbox and the torque converter, because you can put a lot of torque through a torque converter if you're in fourth gear and you try and pull away. Bonus one today, and that's with the E31 and probably the E38 with the M73 engine, the V12. No first gear, especially after the engine's warmed up. Yep, we had this on a forum the other day. In fact, I got a private message and he very rudely then put it on the forum. Bad etiquette, by the way. Don't do it. It's very annoying. Yep, he said that as soon as the engine's warmed up, he can use the Steptronic as much as he likes, and he can't get first gear. That's normal. BMW have decided that the V12 M73 produces quite enough torque in second gear for you to pull away happily, and so locks out first gear. The only time it will use first gear again is that if you stick your foot flat on the throttle, kick down, it will then select first gear. But in normal use, it doesn't let you use first gear. It thinks you've got quite enough torque from the M73. But there you go, that's it. We've covered all the normal operational problems with gearbox, or perceived problems, not real problems. And thanks very much for the comments. It's great to hear them. I love reading them, and I'll answer them as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.